Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Writer's Voice Cafe. I'm Diane Hamilton, and I'm your host for tonight. Yay. We do take turns hosting. Thank you so much for coming. We have Matt Clark on camera. Thank you, Matt. And thank you to the women at PTV, Amy, Heather, and Melissa. We really appreciate your work. Cell phones off, please. And we're going to get right to it. We are delighted to have for our featured writer tonight the multi-talented Christie Hardwick. Christie, yes. Christie and her wife Jane moved here a few years ago, and they have contributed so much to the community. We really thank you very much. Christie is a spiritual guide and is a licensed minister for the Centers for Spiritual Living. She has been a champion in the movement for equality and social justice for GLBT people for 2 decades. Tonight, Christie will talk about her book, The Progressive Wedding Book, a guide for same-gender, transgender, and progressive couples. It's by Christie Hardwick with Jeanette de Beauvoir. Before Christie comes to the lectern, I have read many sections, and it's a very thoughtful, well thought out, very helpful. I have never been married, but I'm ready. I'm getting there with this book.
You're not kidding?
We thought a couple years maybe, but it really is, and Christie will talk about this, but you know, when it's like a mentoring book for having a wedding. It really mentors you through all the steps, and Christie's going to talk about, I am so glad you're here, and I'm so glad I've read this book. I got it on Kindle, and without further ado, Christie Hardwick. Thank you, Diane. You're so sweet. Kind friends all gather around. There's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside. And strangers are as family, loneliness can't hide. You must give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. That's a song I often sing for weddings. Thank you. And part of this wonderful idea of weddings is the celebration, the music, the words. So a dear friend of mine and I decided we should write the book. There have been some guides written in the past, but it was time to celebrate this idea of marriage equality in another way. Written by officiants, people who have married now hundreds of people between us, and had seen couples go through the process of making the decisions of every step along the way. And of course, being members of the lesbian and gay and bisexual transgender community, knowing that for our community, this decision comes a little differently. It comes sometimes much later in a relationship. Not always. Sometimes it's early in a relationship. But it's not uncommon for me to marry people who've been together more than 20 years. So you couldn't just write a book about, you know, new couples. You couldn't just write a book as if these people didn't know each other, or if they hadn't been through something significant already in their lives. So this book is for that, but I also decided to call it the Progressive Wedding Book on purpose. Not the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender wedding book, because we don't have gay weddings. We have weddings that happen to be between 2 men and 2 women, or 2 people who are transitioning, or one that's transitioning, but it's a wedding. And it's a progressive wedding because the history of weddings, which is also a chapter in this book, says that weddings have been changing since the beginning of time. they've been evolving. They've become more and more progressive, therefore the Progressive Wedding Book. Now, we're looking at same-gender couples again. It's a progress that's being returned to, really, because if we read history, we find that same-gender couples are part of history, and they were recognized and adored and loved by many civilizations. It's just that we went backwards in some places, especially Western civilization, and are finally coming back to the progress of inclusion. So this book is about that progress of inclusion. And I've had friends of mine that are in straight relationships who love the book also because it's for progressive couples. If you don't want to have a wedding just based on whatever tradition you come from, just like your parents had or your parents want, but you want to create your own unique experience, this is a book for you. And I also heard from folks who did some pre-reads and people who've read it since then that they really loved learning about the considerations that we have in the lesbian and gay and bisexual transgender community. So, what did we write about? There's several chapters here. I'll tell you what the chapters are. I'll read a little bit from one of the chapters and then share with you from another book that I wrote many years ago, which was for your inspiration. So the table of contents. First chapter, What's in a Wedding? And that's about the history and the components of weddings and where they all came from. The second chapter is marriage preparation. It's letting you as couples think through some of the questions you might want to consider before you go through this process together, and to make the experience and the design of what you're doing just even richer. The third chapter is understanding the ceremony. We do things in weddings that a lot of times we don't really understand why. There are things like the declaration. There are things like saying, you're here to be married, are you coming willingly? It's like, where did all that come from? Well, in history, there's so much of it, but one example that you'll be familiar with is the idea that there could be a veiled bride. So you don't actually know who you're marrying. There could be masks and things that come with different cultures. You actually don't know who you're marrying. So there's this idea of declaration and letting you know that you're actually entering in some kind of a covenant here. So those words needed to be said for the protection of the parties. And the idea that when the government got involved, and then when religion got involved, that there was a lot of interference, and it was all about making the best deal for land ownership and strength and power of families rather than what the couple wanted. And you saw that in the wonderful story of Romeo and Juliet, the way the families had plans for them that they did not want to go through with. So there's information about that, understanding the ceremony and what the components are there for. So there you can make a decision and say, well, I understand why that was there, but we don't really need it. But sometimes we just do things because they've been done. The fourth chapter is choosing specifics for your ceremony. After you learn about where all this came from, what do we want in ours? What's meaningful to us? Which pieces and parts of our heritage? Which pieces and parts of our spiritual background, if we have one? What do we want in ours? Then choosing a venue. And then guess who's coming? And the guest list, which is where I would like to read from. And then chapter 7, one of the other most important things, what should we wear? Chapter 8 is budgeting, the reception. And then we have an appendix full of orders of marriage and readings and all kinds of things for you. And you might wonder about the order in which we did this. And I decided that really it was important to decide who you wanted to be there before you decided on where you're going to have it, what you're going to offer, how big the space is going to be. Because a lot of times what we do is build a wedding on a budget and then invite the people. So in this chapter you'll learn that we have a different approach. Chapter 6, guess who's coming? Need a little water. Is that allowed on television?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Talk amongst yourselves.
You're in charge.
Even your bottle matches your outfit.
I know, isn't that wonderful?
The decision of whom to invite to your wedding day is one which all couples grapple. But lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people have many added complications. While some of the components of the guest list remain constant regardless of your sexual orientation or gender identity and expression, several may not. You'll want to start by determining the constellation of people who make up the world that you and your mate inhabit. Constellations can be thought of as concentric rings that are different distances from the central person or persons. For example, in your own personal constellation, the closest 7 people to you may be all blood relatives. But family ties are more common in heterosexual situations. For gay and lesbian couples, that inner circle may look very different due to the presence of families who do not accept their homosexuality or their gender identity, their siblings, or their children. The first circle of people may be a chosen family you have accumulated over the years. It may be or may not include blood relatives. This first circle consists of the people you consider to live in the core of your life activities, central to your heart and top of mind. While many heterosexual weddings include people with prominent positions in their lives for this first circle, such as a mother or father, in our community, the person you may choose are those with prominent positions in your heart. Once each of you has determined who's in the first inner circle, next you create the first degree of separation circle. Who in your life are the people with whom you spend the most time? Who you consider invested in you, your life, and your future? Sometimes these are colleagues from work, or they can be part of a spiritual community. You socialize with this group, and you intend to stay in touch with them as far into the future as you can see. The second degree of separation ring is comprised of those who were important in your past and still find a deep place in your heart. This could include a close-knit college sister or brotherhood, friends from your favorite pastime, or in some cultures, extended family like cousins. The third degree of separation includes an amalgamation of all people you know, whether you're in touch with them or not. You don't feel close, but you care for them and are in touch occasionally. As you think of these circles, imagine yourself standing in the center of your life. Who is within reach of you? Who is farther away but feels close in your heart? Who is near, but you feel tension when you think of them? Each of you can complete your own chart of people, your own personal constellations, and then come together and share. As you each share your constellations, you'll have a good discussion about the people in your life and how you feel about them. It's a good idea to do this exercise before building the guest list. It will help you create a new circle surrounding your relationship that has meaning and a sense of safety for both of you. So now this has given you the opportunity to have a wonderful talk, and the next discussion is around what kind of feeling you want to have at your wedding. When you look out at your guests, how do you want to feel? If the answer is that you want to feel supported and loved, you will choose people who bring out that feeling in you. If you want to feel generous and inclusive, you may choose people who will bring out that feeling in you. Once you've generated a list of people based on how you want to feel on your wedding day, it's a good time to discuss where there are differences. Up to this point, you'll have included everyone that each of you feels good about for your individual reasons. Now, as you see the assembly, where does your partner not feel safe or supported by your selections? Is there a conversation you can have that will help him or her feel better about this person? Are you willing to not extend the invitation if she or he can't manage to feel better about this person? We are purposely avoiding the specific characters that can play in this potential drama. We know that sticking points happen relating to parents, siblings, ex-lovers, and even children. What matters is that you have the discussion based on your vision for the day, that special day you are creating to mark your commitment to each other as life partners. We suggest you come up with your new joint constellation first, and then decide what the day will offer. Sometimes couples come up with a budget, a per-person cost, and try to fit the guest list to the budget. We suggest you do it the other way around. After creating the circle made up of all those you both feel good about, you then create an experience for all of them, one that you can afford. The important thing is that they witness your nuptials, not that they have a gourmet dinner, lots to drink, or a band to dance to. Can you imagine how wonderful your day will be when it's planned with a level of awareness and thoughtfulness so that you can say to everyone present, every person here is someone we invite to be on this journey of life with us. We have carefully selected you and created this experience so that we can mark this momentous occasion together. We look forward to celebrating life's joys and sharing life's sorrows with each of you in the years to come. Now, we know that sometimes there are others. So now you and your partner have an invitation list that you both feel good about. Some of the people each of you may have originally had on your list may have been removed as you finalized your vision for the day. What do you do with those in your life that won't be attending the ceremony? There are many ways to handle this situation. Here are a few suggestions. Have a wedding ceremony invitation list and a larger reception list if this feels good to you. While we have opted for a smaller intimate ceremony, we invite you to celebrate with us at our reception. Second, send out announcements after the wedding to share your joy, including a picture and asking for a blessing of your union. Third, if you're willing to share your decision-making about your wedding invitations, consider a bold move and send out a beautiful letter to those about whom you care but who won't be attending the wedding. Dear one, I wanted to let you know that name and I have decided to marry. As you can imagine, this is a very big step, and we have thought very carefully about the marriage and the wedding that will signify it. After many discussions of all the people in our lives that we appreciate and care about, we decided to have a very intimate ceremony. We hope that you will continue to be a wonderful part of our lives and that you will bless us on this journey of our committed relationship. We will be happy to share photos and stories once we return from our honeymoon. Thank you for your friendship and support. Now, what to do if someone in your new constellation that you wanted there can't attend? There's a tendency in wedding planning to have a guest list with different tiers or backup people in the event the original list has declines. Since you've already done your work to create your own inner circle that reflects your joint feelings of goodness and safety, we don't recommend you change this list. There's one exception. If you built your constellation and your desired wedding experience and found that you couldn't afford the location or some other aspect that was very important to you without paring down the list, you may want to add the other people back. Again, we recommend that you build a wedding and a reception experience that you can afford for all the people you want to be there. Now, let's say you've invited 60 people and 6 decline who are important to both of you. We suggest that you have their presence at the wedding in a way that fits your ceremony and reception. Here are a few ideas for your consideration. Have a short one-line blessing from each person read before the toasts at the reception. Second, if they're very dear to you and can't travel for health reasons, for example, you may have their blessing read during the ceremony. Third, have them send a written blessing and perhaps a picture that can be placed on a guest registry table or other ceremonial table. You can also put the picture at a table of guests if you have this type of a setup. Christie's son was away with the army when she married Jane, but he was at the table with his siblings in a prominently displayed photograph. Who's coming to your wedding celebration? We hope all those who love and who wish you the best, that you're surrounded by and can celebrate with you your new adventure together. So I have another little piece to read from this, my first publication. It's called The ABCs of an Extraordinary Life. And I brought this because I like sharing it, but also because this is the gift I give to couples every time I marry them. And it's a set of expressions and thoughts to meditate on, to open your day with in a positive way. And it's literally ABC, so you can see there's A and then there's B and big surprise, and then there's C, and it goes all the way.
Did you write all those?
I did.
Oh,
So I wrote these expressions, and I actually took all these photographs. So the photographs are from a very special month in Paris, which I gave myself as a gift when I transitioned my career from working inside of corporations to doing things like this. Okay. So I'll read just the A's. Appreciate everything. Know that on this walk called life, nothing is to be taken for granted. Every feeling, sight, touch, word, note, and the space between the notes is a reason to be grateful. Anticipate good. Know and act as if you know that good is now and forever unfolding for you and everyone. What better way to use your mind? So I'm happy to answer any questions or have a dialogue about anything, or if you'd like me to read another something you have a question about. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, you speak so beautifully and with such clarity. It's an absolute delight to listen to.
Yeah,
you.
really.
Yes.
To mention nothing about this. The question I'd like to ask, if it's all right, doesn't relate so much to the reading as it does to what you said at the very beginning, that same-sex couples have been a phenomenon that has existed throughout history. What civilizations come to mind that were the preeminent ones in that, and why did it end?
Actually, it was, in my research, it was only during the Middle Ages period where there was a gap. Every other time in history prior to that, from the earliest recorded times and the earliest civilizations, including Egyptians, including any other civilization that was ancient, there were same-gender marriages, and they were recognized and usually held actually quite a high place in the order of things. In the order of things. So there actually was not, it wasn't even like it was just limited to a few civilizations or a few cultures or places on the planet. There was recognition of same-gender relationships around the planet. And then in the Middle Ages, with a lot of the religious oppression that came with that, there was a widespread movement to make them not so, because it was actually quite a powerful position. It was a lot like what happened with women and their natural gifts during, you know, the times when they were thought to be evil or witches, that kind of thing. There was some of that happened with the same gender couple demonizing that came later.
Thank you.
There's the American Indians kind of recognized gay people. I don't know about gay marriage, but
Yeah.
I remember
Same
in
spirit.
movies they'd have their
Yes.
own little habitation, you know,
Yes.
and they would be different from the others and so forth. So they apparently were held in some special respect or station.
Yes,
It
thank
was
you for
unusual.
sharing that, talking about Native American culture. And to the gentleman who asked, just so you know, in the first chapter of the book, I referenced the book that did all the research, that has it's all about the research of same-gender relationships. I don't have that on top of my mind, but it's in there. Thank you.
Hi, Christie.
Hi.
I went to a wedding maybe 15 years ago for two women, and it was super interesting. And it was pretty big, some immediate family, but there were three guests that I thought it was unusual, but they'd been together a long time. Each one of their therapists was there, and then their therapist who they did couple therapy with was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just so interesting.
Interesting.
Where was it?
Okay.
In Massachusetts, yeah. And I'm wondering if you've had, kind of, I don't want to say unusual, but
Interesting people who were chosen to be at weddings.
Chosen to be at weddings, yeah.
And I think that's a great question. So you're asking about this particular case where two women decided to have their individual therapist and then their couples therapist to be at their wedding, or part of it?
No, at the wedding.
At the wedding, okay. And whether or not that happened. So the reason why I wrote that actual chapter on who's coming and talked about the constellations was for that reason. Who the people feel most supported by and closest to is different for almost every couple. So, and in our community, it's not unusual that people have big work to do. So because we have internalized homophobia and shame and different things to deal with, therapy is a common thing in our community. So if someone was really helpful to the individuals to break through that, to come to the level of awareness and comfort to publicly declare their love, I can see why they would have those people there, because they're celebrating, saying, thank you for the work that you guided me through that allowed me to be in this place. The individual work, because, and I love that they had both the individual therapists, because the individual work is essential, and I work with couples a lot, and I will say, you each must do your work. Yes, you can do work together, but you each must do your work. You can't sit in a room together getting your individual work done. You're doing couples work. But you and the depth of you and your soul and the releasing of your hurts and your wounds, that you're going to need to do. So I think they were celebrating that. And I've seen everything. I can say my own wedding. I have a picture with my wife and my 2 ex-husbands. All my children were there. I think that's pretty odd. Yeah, right, 2. Yeah. So I was busy. I have children that are 37 this year, and one that's 28, and Jane has a son that's 28. So we had the children there, except for the one that was away at the Army, and my 2 ex-husbands who, helped me bring them into the world, all very happy. And my daughter was married. Actually, it was my daughter's wedding that happened at, but my daughter's was happy to put on her invitation. My parents, Jane and Christie, Paulo and Joe, welcome you to my wedding. So she had kind of an interesting group of people at her wedding too. Yes.
Yeah, Christie, the LBGT community, very recently you hear a lot about the teenagers and what they're suffering through and what they're going through, and there's a lot more. I listen to NPR faithfully because I don't get cable up in the woods in that house that I live at in Berwyn. So I listen to the radio all the time, and here over the last few months during the winter, I've heard a few segments talked about the LBGT community in the high schools and what these kids are going through. Do you branch out outside of the marriage topic? Do you branch out to, I'm sure that you,
okay, so the question is, do I branch out to to youth?
And talk about this stuff to them.
And talk about this to youth. And so my role at this time is to support as a coach to the leaders of the equality movement. So many of the people who head up the organizations that are helping us with equality, I get to work with. That's a privilege of mine. I actually started that service by being on the board of the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, where I met my wife, who is now my wife. And that is an organization that works in K through 12 to eliminate harassment against lesbian and gay and bisexual
transgender youth. Have you ever spoken
youth.
In front of a teenage?
I've spoken in front of many young people.
Wonderful.
I was the chair of that board, and actually was called back a couple of years ago to work with the youth.
Because you have a gifted clarity, Christie, that you're easy. You're easy on the ears, and you're easy, and you, in layman's terms, can open up. You opened up my eyes. I'm ex. I call him my sweet, sweet man. He's a constant in my life still. And I've known him for 18 years. We were almost married, but I've never gotten married yet. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But I'm here to tell you, if I ever was to get married, the little bit of knowledge that you handed us in just that 7th chapter I'd be good enough to go. Just with what you gave us in that chapter. You're really good at your stuff.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up the young people. And one thing I love about young people, they've taught me so much, and the book has that experience of the 20 years in the movement and the experience of young people who teach me the most. When you go to a conference, which many of you may have been to, called Creating Change, it's everyone there's, I'd say 80% of the people are under 25. And when I have been presenting to youth and working with youth and doing some facilitation, you really have to learn, and you have to learn fast and well. And they'll say to me, you need to ask every person, what is your preferred gender pronoun?
Right.
And that, in my generation, that was never part of any of my experience, so I had to really practice to think about that, because I would look at someone and make a decision in my mind how they presented and use the pronoun I thought was appropriate. So the way that youth wake you up to the true idea of inclusion is wonderful.
Well, that's the other thing that I wanted to say on the other side of that coin is that what we are in right now is a renaissance. We're in a Renaissance time. There are things that are being discussed now that would never have been discussed even 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
And there's a whole bunch of doors that are, because of the 20-something generation. I was just having a conversation, what they're doing with the media and what they're doing out there, and they're plugging into things and finding things out.
So a lot of positive strokes for the youth. Great. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
I would imagine that you marry people who, not only on Cape Cod, so I was wondering, are there more older people that you marry, younger? Is it pretty much even out? Or
Interesting. So I think I'm about 100. It may be a little bit more in terms of the couples that I've married over the years. I'm actually ordained as a minister now. It's 2007 since I was doing weddings, so it's been a little while. I'm thinking, in my recollection, that it leans more toward those who've been together for 20 years plus, or 10 years plus. I would say I certainly married quite a few young people also that were maybe in their, none of them in their 20s, everybody at least around in their 30s getting married. What I consider very young, in their 20s, probably just a handful of those. But when I did marry them, the young people specifically, they were from a Midwestern state. They had absolutely zero support. They were not out. They came here to be married. They were by themselves, and sometimes Jane and I and other people would get together and have a lunch with them afterwards to just circle them with that love and celebration, so that they know that we cared about that. And I can't tell you how much joy is on the face of people, whether they're the couple who's been together 20 years or the one that's our young new people who are taking this bold step and coming to Provincetown to be married. When I say, with the full support of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I declare you married, there's something that just lifts in them, recognizing that they are recognized.
What would you say is the hardest in working with couples? Where does the juggernaut, what's the hardest part? Is there any part that is particularly difficult in working with them through? I would imagine you work with the Progressive Wedding Handbook. That's
now I
wonderful.
do, yes.
Is there a particular place that really it brings up a lot? Or?
So the question about, is there a particular place where there's a problem where you get a little stuck, where you have to kind of work through things? And I would say that the biggest place where I need to do the most work, in addition to helping people figure out who should be there if they're going to have a wedding that has, attendance, is what is it that is meaningful to us given the pain and suffering we've had over our religious backgrounds. I want to recognize there's something greater than the two of us. I want to recognize that we are held in something. I want to recognize love here. I want to recognize the spirit of love here. But I'm not comfortable with any of those words that come from my background because they make my hair go up. Now, sometimes they are equally in that place. Where we really run into a challenge is when I'm designing a ceremony with a couple where one has a total love of God and likes the word, where the other one is, don't say that word because I can't even hear it, and then trying to find a way to honor both of them and say something that allows them to feel that. So usually, the reason why I sang at the beginning is I can, with song, bring spirit in for people so that the person who loves the idea of God or some great entity feels that called in. And I usually will find compromise, and they will find that they're okay with nature. That thing called love that's greater than all of us, that holds us in its embrace, those kind of things. So I have to find words that, the way that I deliver them, the person who loves that idea feels honored, and the person who doesn't love the particular word is okay.
I just thought of something. Has you ever worked with couples where it disintegrated and the wedding did not happen?
I did, yeah. I had 2 times where, one, I didn't do the wedding. I declined after several steps when we were talking through the ceremony, and I just didn't feel like somebody really wanted this. One of the two of them really wanted this. So I just said, I out of integrity, I can't marry you. You know, you can certainly go to someone else, but I can't do this. So that happened, and another time they called me and said, you know, and some of it was, I am a little rigorous when it comes to the interview. And sometimes people haven't asked themselves any questions.
Right.
So on a couple of occasions, I think the
right
questions, right,
right.
the questions sort of brought up something that made them pause, which
Right.
I think is probably a good thing.
And decided not to get married.
Decided not to get married.
What questions do you ask them?
I asked them about why they love the other person, asked them what marriage means to them, what things are going to be different, what things are going to be the same, what their expectations are, things like that. So some people literally are getting married but haven't thought about these things, and most of the time they think about them, talk about them, they're still okay. But occasionally they talk about them and think, you think that's what marriage is?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I didn't know I signed up for that.
As you know, the Supreme Court is considering this issue, and it's coming up very shortly.
Yes.
What effect, if it's favorable, what effect do you think that will have on the volume of gay marriage?
Yeah, so when the Supreme Court decides in favor of marriage equality at the end of this month,
Yes.
and should it do that, what effect will it have on volume? So that's an interesting question. I have a wedding Sunday, and the wedding Sunday is because they want to be married before the decision, just in case. They want to be legally married just in case it goes a different direction.
Right.
Most people are feeling pretty confident in the movement that it's done. I mean, we have a tipping point. We have over 30 states. It's just statistically, it's a tipping point that's likely
Right.
to move forward. And it means that the federal government will scramble and try to figure out how to manage the change and the processes at registrar's office. So will there be a rush? It's a fascinating question. When you couldn't have it, and you could in a few places, it made people think about it. I think there'll be an initial rush of people who are celebrating that the world has woken up to my equality. Thank you very much. I'm going to be married in order to celebrate that. I think after that initial rush, like every other couple, gay and lesbian and transgender people will say, do I want to be married? And I think it'll actually be a new question. It'll be, not do I want to be married in order to make the point that I should be able to be married. Do I want to be married because I believe in this institution and I think that it's something that's worth saving? Right now, I marry couples almost every month that say, one of them says, I didn't actually believe in marriage. I didn't want the heterosexual thing. I didn't want this ownership thing. I didn't want this contract thing. I didn't want, but I decided that a public declaration of love had value. And that's what we're trying to say in the book, is that it's not about the state or the church or those kind of things. It's about these two people who are going to face each other in front of other people and say, look at our love and how good is this. So I think that there'll be people who will come out to celebrate, and then we'll see after that.
Thank you.
Can I speak to that for a second? We live in Florida, and same-gender, same-sex marriage only became legal last January. Interesting phenomena that was mostly straight people all were like, well, aren't you going to get married right now?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, just because it became legal doesn't mean I have to go run and do it. It's still something that's a personal thing between us that we would want to discuss, and who knows, maybe 2 years from now, but not, you know, that would be that thing. Is there really going to be a rush? I mean,
Beautiful.
you're saying probably initially. I had some friends who at midnight, when it became legal, ran to
Sure,
court
exactly.
with the house and did
Yeah.
it, but a lot of people won't.
Yes, because it may be the first time you completely contemplate. When something is said that it's not even possible for you, you don't keep it on top of your mind all the time. And when you come out early, which many people have in their teens, you let go of that dream, that idea of a wedding, a long time ago. And it was never part of your vocabulary, it wasn't part of your dreams, you had other kinds of dreams. So now you're reintroduced to it, and you have to think, well, is it relevant to me now? does this matter to me? Do I want this? And that's the subtlety that a lot of our friends don't understand, is that we have not been contemplating this since we were, you know, teenagers, in terms of I can't wait to go down the aisle with my guy or my gal. We were contemplating, how am I going to navigate a world that hates me right now? That's a totally different set of things to work with. And then do I celebrate it by doing this, or is there something else I want to do with my life? Yeah,
well, see, that's what I was saying. My 18-year relationship went into a constant love, which is a rare thing to find outside of a family. A friend of mine told me I was blessed to still have this man in my life as my friend after 18 years, and that we love and care for each other outside of it being a sexual, right, a marriage. But on the other side of it, now I'm 51, I'm not going to turn around and open the front door of this library and say I'm going to fall in love and get married, because guess what? You're right, I have other things that I need to do with my life right now. And I don't know that marriage would even fit into the scope of...
Yeah, so you're saying you don't know that marriage would fit for me right now, but the point of marriage equality, and for all of us, whether we're gay or straight, is equality. Right. That's the point of it. It's not about deciding for who should marry or not marry.
Right.
But we wrote the book because we know that more people are going to contemplate this, and maybe for the first time. And so wanted to do something thoughtful to say, you may not have spent a lot of time thinking about this. Here's some things to consider with the experience we've had with many couples. So I think I'm out of time.
So people can get in touch with you?
Yes. There's a card there on each of your chairs, and it's got the link on the website to the Progressive Wedding Book, which you can get on Amazon or iTunes. And I have a few copies of this if anyone's interested in that. And those of you who gave me wonderful compliments about speaking and singing, there's more of that to come. October is Provincetown Inspiration Weekend, which I have founded and produce in its second year now, which is full of inspirational music and filling your inner well with spoken word and music. And it's 3 days. And Jody, you were there for, I don't know if all of it or a good portion of it, but I hope that you'll join us there. Yes.
I just wanted to say that the principles that you're expressing here are really reference to everyone, whether you're gay or straight. I'm straight, and I was married for 63 years. Right? So, you know, all these things are very applicable to anyone contemplating marriage.
Wonderful, thank you for that.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's for progressive people everywhere. Yes, thank you.
Let's give a hand to Christie. Thank you so much. This book is really about love. And love for yourself and love for your spouse to be. It's really a book in which you discover things about yourself, because each chapter, there are questions, there are things that have to be looked at, and it's really wonderful. So I recommend it. By the way, it got 5 stars on Amazon. 5 stars.
Wow.
5 stars.
Wow. That's great.
Okay, and so this is the ABCs of an extraordinary. Where can they get this? ABCs of an Extraordinary Life?
On my website.
On
Christie, spiritedcontribution.com.
Okay, so on these postcards, there's 2 websites, so you can go to both of them.
A few copies here, Diane.
And there's copies on the welcome table. I downloaded the Progressive Wedding Book on my Kindle, and that's so amazing to me. Like within seconds, you get this book. So, so I want to before we thank you very much, Christie. Really. Thank you to our core team of the Writers' Voice Cafe, Hildy Olson, Diane Hamilton, Matt Clark, Rebecca Levin, Jody Johnson, who is our new coordinator of cafes. Hildy Olson is coordinator of the workshops. And I think Phoebe Otis was going to help with that. And I was going to mention we welcome Fred Long and Phoebe Otis, who have just joined us. Thank you so much. Fred Long is at the welcome table. So we're growing. See you back here the second Wednesday of, that's July 8th for our next Writer's Voice Cafe. Our featured writer is author John Ives.
Oh, wonderful.
He wrote The Keeper.
Yeah.
It's about the lifesavers in the late 1800s, 1899.
Yeah.
It's here in the library. It's a wonderful book. It's about how they save lives, and it's about one man's journey with its ups and downs and tragedies. It's just a wonderful book. And he also wrote a biography of John Waters. And I think it's here. Is it, Matt?
Yes.
It is here also. So he's going to be our featured writer in July. So please like us on Facebook at the Writer's Voice Cafe. And we thank you very much for coming.